Okay. Layshia, thank you so much for doing this podcast with me. I'm so excited to chat with you and continue our dinner conversation.
I know, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So Layshia and I actually, we've been working together for a while, but we work like through telemedicine, right? Mostly. So, cause we're at different places. She's in Connecticut right now. I'm in Seattle. So we actually got to actually meet for the first time in person and have dinner the other night. And it was so great. We had so much to talk about.
I know, I ended up missing my rehab session or being late because we next thing you know, it was like 2 hours later and we're just chatting away, enjoying the dinner. But it's awesome. It's wild that we've been disconnected and hadn't actually met in person. So the cool thing about technology too, we've been able to do all this work together and feel so connected, and then finally actually meet like face to face was kind of funny.
I know, it was great. So at that dinner, we kind of were like, let's figure out what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to learn a lot about Layshia today. I want to go through like your nutrition and of course all that. And then we're actually going to be talking about like environmental health today, which is so fun. It's something that you and I have both started down the road of.
Yeah.
And a topic that I think is on a lot of people's minds. So I think that'll be fun for us to chat about today. But first, I have to do my mom check-in. I call it my mom check-in because it's basically all the questions that your mom would ask.
Right.
So tell me how you've been feeling lately, like not only mentally and emotionally and intellectually, but kind of also with basketball and your physical body. What's been going on?
So mentally it's been tough. It's my first major injury where I've had to miss like the season, anything beyond like, an ankle sprain, you miss a week, maybe a game or two. So that's been a mental battle, one that I don't think you can really anticipate until you go through it. Like people can try and kind of tell you, or like you're gonna have good days and bad days, you'll be back, blah blah blah. But like until you go through it, you really don't. You can't experience it. And so it has been what people said, but the good days, the bad days, even days when I'm starting to do more and I'm super excited, but then I also see how long the road still is to go. So you kind of have that constant up and down, but just trying to celebrate the small victories. Obviously, it's really tough not being on the court. Like I've never missed any chunk of a season, so just watching your teammates out there, like you're still part of the team, but you're just so much more disconnected because you're not, like all those memories you make on the court and all the competitiveness of actually being between the lines is missed when you're not playing, you're not out there. Even I can't even practice, so I'm missing like all of that stuff. I do travel with the team as of lately, so that's been nice, but mentally it's just tough because you're on the team, but you kind of get sidelined literally to the side where you're not truly involved. And so for anyone who's been out, I'm like have a lot of empathy for that now. As like I move forward in my career and one day I'll be back on the court, like when that other teammate gets hurt, like I'll have a lot of empathy for knowing like what they're going through at that moment, or the teammates in the past have actually gone through. So that's where I'm at mentally. But now that I can start rehabbing, I'm feeling a lot better, just that I can move a little more. I'm not on my scooter or my crutches, so I'm overall happier. And then the fact that I can sweat more now too, like I took for granted how much it helps with your endorphins, like overall just sweating and feeling good. Because when I was on the scooter, like I couldn't get a good cardio workout in. And so even my mood was just like, obviously I'm missing basketball, this thing that I love, but I'm also not getting that stress relief every day from working out and moving my body. So it's just like super in a funk and just like kind of sad too. And obviously depression is something you can experience when you're out, but just that initial like, wow, I feel good, I moved today, like I just wasn't getting that. So that was tough. I can so feel the difference now that I'm back. Even just getting a 20-minute bike workout, the difference in how good that feels versus doing nothing all day, just sitting around. Sleeping pretty good, about to start my period, so I have that, horrible fatigue that we go through. It doesn't matter if I sleep 10 hours, like I wake up and I'm tired. So that's something I'm aware of, that like I'm tired because I'm doing more workouts, but I also know that like the period's coming any day now, so like I'm waiting for that release to happen so I can get rid of some of that fatigue.
Yes. And so you said this is your first major injury. What year are you in your career in the WNBA?
This is my 7th year season.
That's so crazy. And so awesome that you take really good care of your body. You're a player that is preventative and on it. But it just kind of goes to show like anybody can get freak injured.
I took a lot of pride in that too, of like, not necessarily that I blame the people who did get hurt, but it's like I did any possible thing to try and prevent it, and then it's like, see, it still happened. So that was like a kind of a blow of like, you can try and control every little possible detail and do any exercise and eat perfectly. But like I stepped on someone's foot and, dislocated my peroneal tendons. Like I've stepped on 1,000 feet before, I've rolled my ankle before, but like this one just happened to be, in practice, just going to get open. I wasn't even shooting. I wasn't even jumping. I just stepped on their foot as I went to cut and get open. And so that was a super bum for like, just kind of a lame anticlimactic way to get hurt too. Just like,
I know.
And then, walk off the court, next thing you know, you're the whole season.
Yeah. Oh, such a bummer. But I mean, up until that point, you had gone almost 7 years without getting injured. So kudos to you for actually like taking care of your body and doing a bunch of prevention, because I'm sure there was a lot of ways that you could have gotten silly overuse injuries had you not been taking care of your body. So
right. So actually more appreciating that I've made it this far without even all the way through college. People have a lot of injuries there too. I know a lot more than I knew in college, but even in college, they'd be like foam roller stretch. I'd always take the time to stretch after practice. So I realized I was working on my flexibility in those really young, early 20s too. That now has helped me so much as well. Just doing
absolutely.
Rehab things I was told.
Yeah. And as far as nutrition, so you were an easy one to work with. I mean, obviously we went through your genetics and some blood work and tweaked some stuff, but you were already eating really well. I think one thing that's interesting that you struggle with is keeping your weight up.
Yes. The problem no one has, and my wife makes fun of me all the time for.
Yeah. So what do you do to ensure that you eat enough calories? Because I think that's something that athletes struggle with in general, but it's more from a fueling perspective. They're not like properly fueled to work out, but for you, it's actually also a part of your body composition.
Yeah, so I track my calories, track my meals, and make sure I'm getting in enough. So that's, for me, I do 6 meals a day. And that's usually some breakfast, then a mid-morning snack, which I usually eat both of those before practice happens by like 11 o'clock. So I'm up in the morning eating at 7-ish. Then I usually get to the gym and do some pre-shots. And then by the time we're going to film, I either eat like my apple and peanut butter or drink my smoothie. And that's the one I really feel a difference, because by that point I've already burned off that breakfast that in the morning. So that pre-snack before practice, I feel the difference when I have that or I don't have that. And then obviously go to practice, try and eat as soon as I can after practice. Sometimes it's a smoothie too for that window or not, but it's getting right home, eating my lunch, and then by then you burn. I feel like your lunch just gets gobbled up from what you just did in practice. So then eating that afternoon snack and dinner, and then usually I'm the person that's like hungry at 9:30 after I already ate dinner around 7. So I eat that last snack, and it's a battle. And then I'm doing better now that I've put on enough weight. Like I feel like I kind of have my grown-up body is what I call it. Finally hit, like I don't drop weight super, super fast as I used to, because I put on enough muscle to kind of like maintain it. But I still notice the days where like we practice hard and, maybe I was tired and I needed a mental break. So I didn't eat my late night snack, but then the next morning, I'm tracking, I weigh myself every morning, because that's one of the ways to see whether you're recovering or not. Is like, did you drop 2 pounds in a day? Are you dropping 5 pounds the first 2 weeks of training camp? Like that means you're not hydrating enough and you're not getting enough fuel in. So by weighing myself too is a big way that I track it. And then we talked about some smart ways that you like pack calories into a smoothie by doing, either kind of some oatmeal in it, a whole banana, different kind of milks that you can use, the protein powder, the peanut butter, like all of those good sneaky ways to pack a lot of calories into a smoothie, so you don't feel like your jaw is just constantly chomping all day. That's what it felt like a few years ago. It's just like, I feel like all day I'm literally eating all day, and that can be mentally taxing in and of itself as well. Like sometimes you need a break.
Totally. And I think another misconception people have is like calories are calories. So you and I have talked a lot about like the macronutrients and how, different people need different percentages, right? Higher protein, lower protein, higher fat, lower fat, all of that stuff. So as an athlete, you need a really good big hit of carbohydrates, but then the macros matter. So what do you feel like is the hardest macro for you to hit?
Definitely the carbs is the hard one for me.
Yeah,
the carbs are hard because it's so many. The protein as a meat eater is okay, but as my wife who's like trying to go away from meat challenges me sometimes, that becomes a little more difficult because it's just so like easy and convenient to pick up beef jerky. Like it's just like boom, it hits, eat a bag of that and it hits my protein for that time period, or do some yogurt. So it's like if you think about trying to be vegan, like sometimes for me that's mind blowing. And know we've talked through my genetics too, that's might not be the best thing for me, but as we'll get into later too, some environmental impacts, like how do we balance all of
Yes.
these things we're trying to reconcile with like social justice and environmental justice, but also our own health and well-being. And so the carbs for me is the hardest one though, because that's the one that I need the biggest amount of. And so it's just constantly eating, and then not eating too much sugar too, because eating like it's easy to hit, you know, a banana and a half cup of berries. But then as we talked about, I kind of get that thing where I'm overheating as my blood sugar drops too quick. So making sure the different types of carbs I eat too, and the timing of when I eat them, like that's also in and of itself is a job when you're trying to be like, you know, like on the highest level and the best possible peak fitness, and like manipulate things as best you can. Like that can be difficult.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, you're putting it, I mean, this is your job, right? So your body's
Yeah.
your job. So you're putting in a lot of effort and work, and you know what? It is paying off. You're doing great. Um, okay. So I also want to hear about, like, I know you're a big chef. You have a nickname, Chef Lay.
Yeah.
And but I want to know how you got into that. So going way back into like your youth and your childhood, I love to hear about food culture. So how did you grow up around food? Like what was the like the food culture in your household as far as like cooking, and did you grow up in the Clean Plate Club, or who cooked, and what kind of foods did you eat?
Yeah.
You know, we grew up in an era where cooking was prominent, but then also like our parents worked, and you know there was quick meals like rice-a-roni was around, and like all these kind of
Mac
box
and
packaged
cheese.
dinners, mac and cheese. Yeah, so what was your house like?
Yeah, it was a little bit of all of that. And my mom worked. She actually ended up hurting her neck, so she ended up staying home like after middle school and beyond for me. But definitely in even those earlier years, it was a mixed household of like we cooked sometimes, or my parents making like chili was one of the fun family recipes we always made. But then we also had like the Taco Bell nights, the McDonald's, you know, nights. We had the, you know, stick the whatever the meals in the we were talking about these the microwavable meals where you can
Oh
never
yeah.
get the brownie quite cooked right, or you know the mashed potatoes are still frozen. Those kind of quick meals. Cup of noodle was like one of my favorite meals to eat.
Oh
Like
yeah.
I love cup of noodle, and that was always one of the easy ones that like parents are working. You know, you're getting home from school or practice, you can always throw a cup of noodle in. You can always make, you know, the Kraft macaroni and cheese. Those are easy things. Fish sticks, right? All those like
Yeah.
from our childhood, like those very timely, like easy to eat, like so good, like toaster strudel, Pop Tarts, like all those amazing, like nostalgic things you look back on. And so I had a mix, and that's what I try and remember. And we were talking about this too, is like looking into having kids is like realizing like I turned out okay, and I ate some pretty, you know, we
Yes.
suspect things now looking at how I eat, and I turned out just fine. And so it's like that moderation and balance of not being totally strict. And so I grew up in a really good mix, but it definitely wasn't like conversations about like, okay, make sure you're eating your, you know, healthy. It definitely was like, you know, you had green beans and, you know, some chicken and rice. It was like, eat all of your food. It was the Clean Plate Club for sure. And I hated green beans growing up. Like I would hide them under the table. Like I tried, you know, get my sister to eat them. Like I did anything. And I love them now. It's just one of those kid things where it was like, I don't know, they're green, they're weird. Like just did
Yep.
not, I hated onions. Like, and now I love them. And so it was really a mix, but I always gravitated towards the kitchen. Like, I was like, Mom, what can I help with? Like, just grating the cheese at a really young age where I couldn't, you know, was too young to be too close to the fire yet. I would just do whatever little like sous chef helper things with my mom. Like, let me do this, let me help with that. So I realized like I just naturally always had a love for the kitchen and for cooking. And so as that developed, as I went to college, obviously there's the dorms and you're mostly using your meal plan, but you're cooking a little bit. Especially in the summer when my teammates and I like usually rented rooms in a house, and so there was no meal plan in the summer, and that's when I really had to start being like, okay, what do I even cook? And one of my teammates was a little more advanced than me, and I remember this is when we thought like tilapia was good, you know.
Oh yeah.
That was like all the rage. Everyone was eating like tilapia.
Yes.
And I remember her teaching me one of the first times just like how to put a little olive oil in the pan and like sear the, you know, salt and pepper, a little garlic salt, cook the tilapia on each side for a few minutes, making some rice, little things like that I kind of picked up along the way. But that love of the kitchen and was always in me. And so as I kept going through college and hit the pros, once it was really like my job and I was even getting more information about the nutrition, it felt really natural to be like, I always wanted to be the best at what I did. And in college, you eat, like, you're young, you just eat what's there because like you're just struggling in college. Like, you're trying to make it to class, you're trying to like
Oh my gosh.
survive. You can eat donuts, eat pasta, fettuccine. Like, I just remember eating all of that and like performing fine because it was like, you're just young and you can go and hitting the pros where the level of play is so much harder. The grind, it's so much more demanding, and you're literally on your own. Like, there is no meal plan. There's no, it's like you get in your apartment, it's you, the grocery store, like you have money, you get a paycheck every 2 weeks. And so that's kind of when it really hit. And balancing those first few years when I was in Indiana, like, okay, what do I want to eat? I'm an adult. Like, I can buy Oreos if I want, or I can eat
Mm-hmm.
this. And as I started to clean my diet up a little bit, just naturally, because I wanted to be really good at things, like I wanted to feel my body well, I noticed like how some of those things I used to eat just didn't feel good anymore. And that was the big thing for me. It wasn't this extreme shift of like, these things are bad, I'm not going to eat them anymore, they have dye in them, they have gluten, they have whatever in them. It was more just like, wow, I don't feel as good when I eat that. So like, I'm going to eat the thing that makes me feel better. Like, I love fried chicken, but I don't always feel the best when I eat like fried chicken and waffles. So I only try and eat that once in a while. And so it was just kind of a natural, like, gravitational process for me, just eating cleaner and cleaner. Because then when you feel that energy and how much better you feel when you work out and perform and your mood is better, like it's an easy, like 1+1 is 2 for me. Like, I see clear results, so I want to eat better. So I feel better,
Yeah.
you perform better. It's like an easy, obvious chain for me.
It's being more intuitive and like listening to what your body's trying to tell you.
Right. Because I had those days where I, like, a couple years ago, I was back around college campus, and there's this donut spot that we used to always eat, like, make them hot. And just that nostalgia in college, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, let's get a donut. Because, like, whatever, like, it's fine to eat a donut. Like, no one says you can't eat these things anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I got one, and I just felt, like, sick, and I felt bad. I just was like, ugh. And it was one of those, it wasn't like, our fancy gourmet donuts we have now in Portland and all these places
Yes.
where it's like, I mean, it was just like a fried donut where, like, by the time you take it home, like, the bag's a little greasy. So, like, that was, like, pretty heavy for me to eat now, where it just was like, I don't feel great. That was not worth it. So, like, I'm gonna just stay away from those. And so it's just that balance of feeling good for me, and I listen to my body and, like, go where my body tells me.
That's awesome. I think it's important to reiterate that too, that like balance and variety and moderation, that's really what matters in the long term. And I think people do try to quote unquote clean up their diet, but there's a whole nother swing that can go the opposite direction, where people get so caught up and so intensely obsessed with eating healthy or eating clean that then it can actually turn into its own like eating disorder almost. And for people to know that, yes, it's important to eat like all your fruits and vegetables and to, have a bunch of really wholesome, nutritious, good food, but to have a donut every once in a while and to indulge on some of your favorite stuff. And I think it's actually good when your body becomes more sensitive, like what you were talking about. So when you do get a huge hit of sugar, like our body's supposed to scream when that happens, because it is like this giant hit of refined sugar, right? And it's freaking delicious. I mean, you should enjoy it. But then it's a good negative feedback loop, right? That's supposed to happen. I think where we get into trouble is when we build up a tolerance to that, and then we don't feel bad after we have a huge like fast food meal, or we don't feel bad when we have a donut and stuff. And so I think that's a good way to kind of tell and to start eating more intuitively. And I think people like you who are in the spotlight, I think it's so helpful for people like me who are providers dealing with, everyday people that are trying to be healthy and stuff, seeing somebody like you being really good with your diet and being nutrition forward, but also being like, I grew up on some Pop-Tarts just like you guys, and I have a donut every once in a while just like you guys, because I think then people start to lose some of that like guilt around.
Yeah, and like we're fed this, I mean, even with, not to be all social media is horrible, but like we're fed these constant images too, right? Because it's become such a craze, like the fitness craze right now and the movement, and there's so many different like diets or fads or lifestyles to try that it's like, I feel like you just get on Instagram too and you feel like everyone has this amazing bodies. We're already fed these images that like people all look this way that are super lean, and it's like, no one even looks like that after they eat. Like everyone has some stomach after you eat a meal, your body looks full, but like what we see out there is just like these perfectly groomed bodies. They're tanned and like lean, and it's like we're trying to reach something that's unattainable. And so I always say like I'm team muffins over team abs. It's like I have some abs, but I'm not like team, like I enjoy food too much to be like I'm gonna only eat, you know, like the cleanest things. Like my wife and I talk about that, and I think it's really healthy for us, especially as you're being a pro athlete who does lean out some, but being like I'm not going to be so obsessed with having abs that like I don't enjoy the scone or the muffin or the French toast when I go out to brunch sometimes, because like that stuff brings me so much joy in life that I don't feel like it's worth it. Like, why are we doing the things we're doing? Like, we're eating healthy to feel good, or to look good too, because I like to be fit and in shape, but not to reach something that's just unattainable, because we're constantly fed these images that like people don't really look like that every day.
Totally. Amen. I think it's all about balance. Okay. So how did some of your nutrition and your cooking and all of that, start to trickle into a little bit more about like eco-friendly and environmental health? Like when did that start for you? And kind of where did you start? Cause it's all over the place. I mean, it's finally being talked about enough that we feel like, oh my God, environmental health again. Like another person's talking about the environment.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of scientific illiteracy, I think, in our communities and in our world right now. People don't understand. And so there even is a lot of people that are out there denying things like climate change. You know, and so like, how did you kind of get started, and then where did you start?
It started in the last year or so, and I think it might have even just been on Instagram. Obviously, we're hearing it a lot more, especially as our president like denies climate change and all these things. Yeah. We're starting to see more like plastic-free accounts and like zero waste, like a lot of these things. And for me, it started with realizing like the chemicals we put in our body, like a deodorant, for example, or lotions or soaps we use, that like what you put through your skin like gets into your body, right? Doesn't it go in quicker than actually oral things? So I started to realize
certain things do.
So it was like, wait, as a professional athlete and someone who like really cares about body and performance and all these things, I'm like, wait, chemicals? And then of course we hear like the scary cancer causing things, which just seems like a lot of things can cause cancer nowadays. But the deodorant was a big place that I started. It was just like, wait, antiperspirant, like it's making me not sweat. Can that be a good thing? Like naturally stopping something with your body. So that like was the initial thing. I first was like, should I use a natural deodorant? So I went down that whole rabbit hole of trying different brands. And it just kind of gradually started from there. It's like between Pinterest, Instagram, the internet, once you like search one thing, you realize like, wait, single-use plastic. And then, you know, how chemicals can leak in your food and the way we're storing things in plastic. Like for me, again, back to like, I want to say it just started with this moral obligation to like the world, but it didn't. It started with like my own health, because I'm like, wait, I don't want to be putting these things in my body. Like, I don't want to be using plastic and storing my food in it. Like I'm a big meal prepper and I had plastic Tupperware, and I'm like, wait, are the chemicals leaking in my food? Like BPA, is that a thing? Is BPA free a thing? Like going down the total rabbit hole of that. So switching to like glass Tupperware and wanting to use that more. And from what I've read, like reheating your food in plastic is really bad because it releases the chemicals, putting them in the dishwasher. And so it was like just a big rabbit hole of like, you know, I didn't really freak out, but it was just a gradual over the last couple of years, learning more and trying to make small incremental changes. And then most recently within the last year has been like the plastic free. And that's been more the environmental change, that it's like becoming aware of single-use plastic and how much we use it and how bad it is for the environment. So like using something that's like not going to degrade or is going to sit in a landfill for like God knows how long, all because I just want to use one Ziploc bag. And you know, like I've always been try to reuse the Ziploc bags, so like once it gets peanut butter and jelly in it, you know, like it's just a mess. And then you just get used to like using one for an apple, throwing it away, grabbing another. They're so cheap. There's 1,000, you know, comes in the pack of 100, so you just continually toss them. And so for me, it was like the awareness, which starts with anything, right? Like social issues, with race, with gender, with anything like that. It starts with like your own internal work, becoming aware. And once I became aware, it was like, I almost wish I had, because you start to realize how much single-use plastic you use. And then you do know it's scary. Like we don't want to leave the world worse than we found it, but like that's the track we're on right now. And so thinking about my kids and the future, like I care about people on the earth and the world and planet.
Yeah.
And so just trying to start making small changes and stop using less of that plastic. And but first is just the awareness. And it's scary how aware you become. It's like you cannot unsee it, and it's
I know.
hard.
Well, once you know better, you do better, right?
Yes.
And
That's
I think it does start by just asking questions, right? And like you said, with any topic that you were previously not aware of, or that you're curious about, or that even I think fear partially is just like because we don't know about it and things like that. But as far as the skin thing goes, that's a really interesting piece that I don't think a lot of people think about. So people are starting to understand like what we put in our bodies affects our cellular health in our bodies, but then also what we put on our skin gets absorbed.
Right.
And I think people who are in like the who have like a naturopath, or who who are a little bit more health forward, start to understand that, because there's like creams and lotions that they'll prescribe for certain vitamins or minerals or hormones or things like that. And then you start to think about it. But everyday people, I mean, we don't think about our shampoo or our lotion or our deodorant.
Oh, and they're made with they're so unregulated in a lot of ways, like fragrance, like what does that possibly mean? And then once you realize, like, especially because we know, like, not all companies are bad, but like companies care about making a profit. So like they're not thinking, how am I poisoning or making something that could be toxic, or the effects that this could be on the consumer who's going to purchase it. They're just like, this is legal, I'm making money, like great. If I cut corners, like who's regulating this is always one of the big questions I ask, like who's protecting us? And we often know, I'm not like a conspiracist, but like the government's not always stepping in and regulating these things when companies just have the opportunities to like make money off of it. So unfortunately, it puts a lot of the onus on like the consumer, where we spend our money in just being more educated and aware and asking more questions and trying to find the answers, and being like responsible or accountable for what we put on or in our bodies, and obviously what we feed to our families and what we put on their bodies. And like that's scary thinking about having kids too, of like what even like some baby companies, like they're not all made the same, finding ones you can trust. And so for me, this bathroom was a big place to start too, because once you go down the rabbit hole, it's like you feel overwhelmed, like where do I possibly begin? Like you realize that like there's plastic in everything, and then you're freaking out, you're like, the world's ending, what do I do? And then it's like, okay, just start with like maybe a deodorant. That was my big thing. And then for me, I switched to like the different type of razor, like the safety blade razor. So I'm not using like those little heads. And then like a bar of soap, that's super easy, instead of buying like the Dove soap every day and using that. It's like there's enough brands that are good now that you can use. Like I haven't switched to the natural shampoo yet. I'm like trying to find one for my hair texture and all that, but I've started at least like little things. And when you travel a lot, you realize how much single-use little plastic you use. Because like we all go to Target and it's just like, yay, little shampoo, little conditioner, instead of buying the one that you can refill and reuse. Like little things like that, just starting somewhere. Because it does take years. It's like people who go vegan, like you don't just do it overnight. Like if you do eventually, a lot of the folks I've talked to have vegan friends, like it took me like 5 years to actually fully go vegan, because they started cutting out small meat, like little things, dairy or cheese at the end. It doesn't just, you don't have to just do it overnight. Again, it's like moderation. If we all just made a few changes, then like that would help the world a lot.
Absolutely. And I think too, some of this stuff is people don't realize that this is stuff we use every day. Like the frequency of use is another big thing. So like you put deodorant on every single day. You put shampoo or lotion or whatever every single day. So it's kind of like one of those things, long term, we don't know some of the effects. I mean, short term, we're all okay, right? Like we're not like walking around with good, like we haven't grown limbs from like our deodorant. And there's nothing like crazy happening. But long term, I think that's one of the things we have to understand about science, is sometimes we just don't know until we know, right? We just, we need to wait. So if we play it on the safer end in the short term, I think that's always kind of a better route to go. How many different deodorants did you try until you found your favorite natural?
I'm like still trying. I think we talked the other day, like Smith's is one of the brands I really like, but I also feel like I'm using one, it works, and it stops working, and then I'm like, great, like trying to find a new one. And they're kind of pricey too. Like they can really get up there with the ingredients, so that's tough. Like, I mean, I've definitely tried at least 6 or 7 different brands. It's been over the last couple of years. Like I'll try a new one. And we talked about wanting to get a service where they mail in, because then you're using a single use, I guess you use the whole bar of deodorant, but like the whole stick, but then you just throw the plastic thing away and then there it goes. Like used it for a month or two and then it's gone, sits in the landfill forever. So it's like, trying to find some smarter ways to use some things. I've looked up recipes for the homemade one, but I haven't quite given that one a shot yet. My friend actually made a homemade one that I loved. And so I'm like, she could maybe be my supplier or
Yeah.
figure out the recipe for her.
Your eco-friendly deodorant dealer.
Yeah. We like I'll trade her like something homemade for her homemade deodorant.
Yeah, I think I tried probably 4 or 5 too. And what's funny is that we landed on the same one. So shout out to Schmitz or shit. What's it called?
However you say it, it's like yeah.
Yeah. And for those listening, they do sell it at Costco now. So it is it's like a 3-pack, and it's a little cheaper that way. So if you're listening and want to try any deodorant, maybe start there.
It's a good brand. It hasn't stained my clothes. Like, it's worked through sports, so that's a big thing. Like sweating really heavily every day with sports.
It has to work.
Yes.
I mean,
just, like, I kind of don't smell. I need to like not be funky every day.
And I think that's what a lot of people, when they're going down the deodorant path, they're like, oh, they don't work. I still smell, blah, blah, blah. I think it's just, you got to kind of like keep trying and find the one that you like. The other thing I want to talk about was the single-use plastic in the Tupperware and the BPA. Okay. So there's actually a really interesting study that was done a while ago. And so I'm like a genetics nerd. And so one of the things there's a different part of genetics called epigenetics, and that's basically how our choices, our food, our lifestyle, our exposure can then help turn our genes on or off. So there's a really good study looking at BPA actually in this mouse model. And so they use this mouse called an agouti mouse. It's like this typical mouse that they use for research studies. And they had this fat yellow brown mouse, or a fat yellow mouse, and then a skinny little brown mouse. And so what they did is this gene, they basically fed a sulfur-rich diet. So they fed one of the mice a really sulfur-rich diet, who had this bad obesity gene, basically. Yeah. And those babies came out skinny and brown out of the fat little mouse. So it kind of, the mouse's diet ended up being able to turn some of those negative genes off. Then they fed or exposed the skinny brown mouse to BPA. And that skinny brown mouse had fat yellow mouse babies.
Oh my God.
And then they did an even different experiment down the line. They then switched the diets, and they gave the little from the skinny brown mouse who had the BPA exposure, and those babies came out fat and yellow. Then they gave the broccoli and the really healthy rich diet to those babies, and then they had skinny brown babies. So it's like this crazy thing. So thinking about all of this negative exposure that we have to all of these things like BPA. Right. I mean, how many of us have reheated a Tupperware container, which leaks out BPA? I mean, we've been exposed to all of this, but I think one of the hopeful things is to realize you load your diet with fruits and vegetables, and you can undo a lot of that and mitigate some of that risk. And so that's where like epigenetics comes in. It's like genetics is not your fate, or past exposure is not your fate. Same with like, us eating tons of packaged foods when we were little, or McDonald's Happy Meals or whatever. We can then now change our diet, and some of those positive things that we can put in can then kind of almost undo some of that damage. So I think it's an important piece to know, that people aren't just screwed. You can make it change.
Right. And that's been one of the biggest things I've had to learn from you and the work we've done, is getting the micronutrients in, because I was always big on the macros, which is a lot easier, like hard to hit those calories. But as we talked about at dinner, it was like focusing on like, I have to eat so many calories a day, like I don't have time to eat the lettuce or the broccoli or the whatever, because like it doesn't count for enough for me. So it's like so focused on just hitting these bigger calories, but missing on like all those micronutrients that are also super important, have all those vitamins in them. So there's been a lot more focus for me in getting that was a big change, was eating way more fruits and vegetables, putting the emphasis on that. It just fitting them in, because you know they are filling too, but making sure I get those in, and just like seeing when we did all the levels in the test, like how important that stuff in. It was like, okay, make an effort, and just putting like the leafy greens and the purples and all the colors we talked about.
Yep.
The vibrancy of your diet, like that's been a big difference for me too, that not just hyper focus on big 10 calories. I think it's easy when we eat bars and we just eat like, you know, you're like, eat pasta the night before a game, but you're not like talking about like, make sure you have the broccoli on the side too. You're just eating like chicken fettuccine and some pasta, which is great to get like that, you know, those calories for the night before the game, so you have enough energy, but like also how important those vitamins are.
Yeah, and how really easy it is to just, because they've shown just epigenetically how a few bites of broccoli can make epigenetic changes. And so I think people are like, well, I'm not going to eat enough. But even if you throw in like a couple of leaves of spinach in your eggs in the morning, or a couple of bites of some of the veggies, all of that adds up and matters. So, you know, it's also a good place to start. And environmentally, veggies are, you know, easier to grow, plentiful, like all of that stuff. So I think loading up our diet with a lot of those can increase the quality of our calories, basically.
And that's been we've talked about this a lot too with, and my wife talks about it a ton, like she struggles with it, and she's starting to leak into my struggle with it too, is like how hard meat is on the environment. And that's probably like how we, obviously factory farming, how we farm, it's not great in a lot of ways, but just how much like cows, for instance, take up in the environment, how much water it takes to make a hamburger, like things like that. And like the balance of trying to be environmentally justice, but also like needing to perform for your sport and for life and wanting to be healthy. And when we originally talked, I kind of asked you the question, like, I need to know, like, is being vegan the best thing or is not? And I know I still feel like I've had a lot of questions answered, but still always have a lot of questions, like, you know, cutting out meat a little bit here and there. And I've done more meatless meals and I still feel fine and performing okay. And obviously I haven't cut it out by any means, but even like having tofu once in a while, or having a meatless meal, like we made an udon noodle soup and it had 2 eggs in it, and like that was still a good source of protein. And for me, unlocking, I think so many of us too, it's like when you're raised like always having that chunk of meat for dinner, like you almost can't see outside of like what does a meal look like that doesn't have like meat at the center of it. And so there's so many cool recipes too, like Minimalist Baker and all these cool accounts now that have a lot of like vegetarian friendly meals. Like even if you do a meatless Monday, how much impact that has if everyone, or at least ate meat less, like once a week less, like not even actually to cut it out, just like one meal a week, do less meat, or, you know, don't have the bacon every day for breakfast. So little things like that would make a difference. But it's a hard balance, because like you want to do right by the world, but then also like what's best for your body. You know, we talked about like for my genes, like, and for performing in sports, like being vegan is not the way to go. Like it would be really difficult for me, really hard. So because I was on the train of just like whatever makes me perform the best, like I will try it, because like that's what's really important to me.
So here's my stance on veganism, and I get this question a lot, especially I'm in Seattle, right? So we're one of the more like granola-y locations. But so I do a lot of like deep biochemistry, right? In my job, I look at genetics. I look at like a ton of blood lab markers. And so I've gotten to follow people on tons of different diets and follow them for like years at a time, watching changes in their diet and how that affects their like cellular outcome, like what is going on with their blood work, what is actually what their zinc stores are actually doing, like B12, all that stuff. And what I've found is that animal proteins are really important in the diet. But you can get a ton of the trace minerals and a ton of the vitamins that plant foods are missing from almost any animal protein. So it doesn't necessarily have to be beef or chicken or pork. Like you can hit a lot of the same nutrients using any kind of shellfish, any kind of fish, eggs, cheese. Like, so people that even include a hit of animal protein like once a week are gonna help their cellular stores and help that bioavailability that comes with an animal protein versus a plant-based protein. So all of the studies as far as environmental health goes, and even like with colon cancer, are looking at specific kinds of meats and how that impacts our microbiome and all that stuff. I mean, we can, go down a crazy rabbit hole. The consensus is we need less meat, like across the board.
Right.
But then the other kind of balance is that we actually, I believe we need animal protein in some form, because I've watched vegans over time, and it doesn't happen after 5 years. It happens after like 12 years or 15 years of being vegan.
Mm-hmm.
Start to decline as far as like cellular micronutrients, just because they're lacking that bioavailability, which is why vegans should be getting B12 shots once a month.
Right.
Because even with nutritional yeast and stuff like that, it's hard to get the bioavailability sources, and B12 and, zinc and selenium and all that stuff is so important for so many things. So I kind of have this interesting view that like, we all need to be eating less meat.
Yeah.
We definitely don't need as much as we think we do. Like,
Mm-hmm.
meat should almost be like a side dish.
Yeah.
And we definitely don't have to have it every day, but then even a hit of a couple of eggs a week,
Right.
is fine. So I think people switching over almost to like a pescatarian style diet where you're doing
Mm-hmm.
mostly fish, which is, easier on the environment than something like factory farms like chicken and beef and stuff like that.
Right.
But across the board, we should all be eating less meat.
But then again, it goes back to that moderation. Like, doesn't have to be one or the other. You don't have to eat every day, but then you don't have to cut out cheese and meat and all of it in the next month. But finding a balance, which is that was a hard answer for me. Like, I was looking for like a black and a white answer originally.
I know, it's such an annoying answer. It's annoying.
I know. But I've been like, I had took some like deconstructing in my mind to realize like I can eat a meal that doesn't have meat and like still feel okay for practice the next day, because I had this like misconception that like I have to get protein because we're all like protein obsessed too, that like we have to eat this much or we won't be able to perform. And like I've done it now, even over the last year, started more in the off season because I'm like, I feel better about that as I'm like training. I don't feel like I have a game. And even through this season when I was playing, it was like, oh, I feel fine. Like, actually, that's great. I had like, an udon soup, or we did the tofu. We just did a tofu meal last night, and my energy felt great today, besides, my period stuff. But like, I didn't feel any less like ability to perform.
Yeah. What are some big like swaps you've made to cut out the single-use plastic? I know for me, Ziploc, I mean, I have 2 kids, I pack their lunches. Ziplocs are just like so easy and nice. So I used the giant thing I had of Ziplocs. I was like, I'm not going to buy any more.
Yeah.
I need to use the rest of this. So I've switched over to like stasher bags, or those silicone bags, and I know you have too. And then there's some compostable little Ziploc, like green Ziploc bags, almost not Ziploc brand, but other off brands. Even like the old school paper lunch sacks for stuff, or wrapping the sandwich in a couple of paper towels. So what are some of the ways you've tried to ditch the single-use plastics?
I've definitely done the stasher bags. Like, that's one of the first ones that hits everybody home, is the Ziplocs. And one of the roommates we live with back home too was telling her like, this is the end of it. Like, so we enjoy all these plastic bags. And then I got the stasher bags, which they can be a little pricey, but like they last forever. So you kind of have to, invest in them. It's an investment in it, because this stuff can get expensive too. So we look at like people's socioeconomic status too. Like, we're asking them to make choices, but like, how do we supplement or offer things that like people can actually afford to make the changes too? So that's been something I'm really aware of, is the price of some of these things. And so the stasher bags are great. And I do like the sous vide cooking technique. You drop it in the water. So the stasher is great for that. And they're super durable. Like, you can put them in the dishwasher, you can freeze meat in them and still reuse them, because that's one of the big things. Once you put meat in a plastic bag, you're not supposed to use it again. So I've done like everything with those bags, like indestructible. And then switching to the glass Tupperware is a big one, and not using that, like, peace of mind. And you can heat those up too. They're great. Reusable lunch pail. I've had that for a while, so I use that. And then actually switched to reusable napkins was a big one. We did too in the off season. So because then you can compost the paper towels, and even you just use them so often, like for little spill things, and then like we're just kind of throwing them away, kind of like the plastic bags. And so We switched to those, and that's like Wild Minimalist is like one of the accounts I really love. They're great. And they're like come in cute different patterns. I think the ones we have are like a rainbow, and you just reuse them and like end up just throwing them in the washer and fold them. They're super easy. Those have been the main changes. Like I've had some extreme ones I want to do that my wife is like, not yet. Like I was like, we can use these for toilet paper, and she's like, absolutely not. And like,
I'm not ready for that.
yeah, like that might be a much. Like who's gonna wash those? So I was like, yeah, we'll wait on that one. But I did switch to dang it, what's it called? What is it called? What the crap? Have you heard about toilet paper?
No.
Oh, we have to get it to you. Dang it. It's made out of bamboo, which grows so much faster too. It's like using the trees. It's a bamboo toilet paper. It's like a recycled, reused one, and then it's actually on you just do it on order. So like it gets shipped to your house, and then you're not worried about.
That's nice.
That's amazing too, because you don't run out of toilet paper because it like comes on time to your house. So switch to a more like smarter, either like the reusable toilet paper, which they have at Target, or like a bamboo one that's better. That's been another big change to the bathroom stuff. Definitely done the bar soap. We travel. Oh, and have you heard of the beeswax wraps? That's my other big one I use instead of.
I like the beeswax wraps for sure. And then another thing I like didn't even think of that was like is just almost getting like fabric from the fabric store and cutting it in, and then just like tying it.
Yeah.
So why didn't I think I could do that? So we've had like swatches of like little fabric, or even like reusable napkins or whatever. You can just like literally wrap a sandwich or whatever in that, and if it's big enough, you can just tie it in a little knot and like throw it in a lunch bag, or you know. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to do it. And go ahead.
Oh, a lot of it too is like you don't have to go out and buy all these new things, like you reusing the glass jars from like the jelly or the little honey jars. Like there's so many jars of sauces that we buy all the time that we can wash those out, put them in the dishwasher, get really clean. And then like a pickle jar, that's like a perfect thing you can put some snack in. Obviously with the glass, you're a little more careful with the children and having to give it to you're not going to see them with a glass tub, jar, but for like us, we use those. And I use mason jars a ton too. Mason jars are great. You can do drinks, smoothies in them, like all types of snacks. And like fruits store really well in them too. Like I'll do greens, or if I meal prepped and like left the beans in those to reheat. So like that's like little random glass jars are like my favorite too.
Yes. Yeah. Because you can use them for like pill jars, or like the little tiny ones. Like you said, you'll hoard the like honey pots or the jars.
Like recently my wife was trying to pack for a trip, and she's like, oh my God, I love that you saved this. And I was like, can you say that again so I can record it? Because she's always complaining about the little random jars we have in the cabinet. Like, what are we going to use these for? And then she used it for like some little hair product on the road. Like she only needed to take a little bit, and she didn't have to check her bag. And I was like, I told you. Like, I love that.
Yeah. Or even just like, I know people are super into like having things look organized, and like the what is the method that you're like simplifying everything? There was like a Netflix special on it.
Marie Kondo.
I think something like that. Or
the magic art of tidying up. Yeah.
Yes. And so people are like, I just want like everything to look clean and neat and that kind of stuff. But you can totally use like a pickle jar or like a jam jar or something, and have it be like super clear and cute, and put your makeup brushes in it and stuff like that, versus going to the Container Store and buying like all the like acrylic plastic little shelves.
Yes.
I think people just like don't think about it.
We have open shelving in our kitchen at home, and that's one of the things, like I love that beautiful aesthetic. And so the big thing too is if you live in a place where you can buy bulk, which of course like a Seattle or like where I'm in the Bay Area, like instead of buying almonds in the plastic bag every time, like all you do is measure your jar at home, and it's called with the tear, and you write it on top, and then when you go buy in bulk, just put the almonds in it, take it up there, and then they measure it. They take the weight of the can out, so you're not paying for that. And then you have like this beautiful jar of almonds like sitting on your shelf that you didn't use plastic for, that you can do that with like oatmeal, with all types of flours, with like every seed and nut has it now, like a lot of dried fruits. They have so many things where I live where you can just like buy it in bulk, and then that's an easy
even spices. Like we got like a spice rack for a wedding gift or whatever, but they're little glass jars. And so I just take those to the little bulk section now and just like fill those back up. And it's cheaper, way cheaper.
It ends up being actually, yeah, way more economical. And that like the beauty, you get the beauty of it too, like the aesthetic. And you can put like cute little labels on it or like,
Yes. Okay, let's talk about feminine health. So
yeah.
you got me to switch over to the silicone menstrual cup.
Yeah.
Totally. I was so nervous about it. I was like, ew, no
Yeah.
way. And then you were like, I play full WNBA games in it. And I was
Mhm.
like, no way. And
Yeah.
so I was like, okay, I gotta just like try it. And
Yeah.
so I'm like a total believer now. I will never go back. They're so much better. But tell me about like your work with Diva Cup and like how you switched and like, I mean, just basically help convince women that it's like not as gross as they think, not as weird as they think, and that it actually works.
It's life changing, literally. So I tried it my like second year when I played in India. I think one of my friends I actually met there was just told me about it, and I was like, what? Like the same reaction. We're like, a cup? Like, wait, like you get the whole like train of thought, and then people
Yes.
like, hold on, explain it, like pull up a diagram, show me something,
Yeah.
how does it work? And so just to explain, it's just this, like a small silicone cup, so like probably like 2 inches maybe big. They actually have different sizes now for people who are like have had children, or obviously we're just not all built the same. People have
Right.
different clothes, and so it's a small silicone cup that you like fold in half, insert in your vagina, and then it expands, and that holds all of your blood when you menstruate. So it's life changing. Like you can pee with it in, you can wear it for up to 12 hours, which that was the big gift for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then being able to play in it, like having the flexibility to just like run and jump. And obviously have used tampons throughout all the years, but you have to change those at halftime, right? Because you're changing those depending on your flow, like every couple of hours, and
Mm-hmm.
especially with sports where you're like sweating and doing all these things, and you're just anyone who's played sports and has a uterus knows that like you've asked that teammate to please check, like, am I good? It's like, especially when you're wearing the white uniforms, like, check
Yeah.
me if I'm good, and you're like, God, you've had that scare, that moment where you've either like bled through your spandex or God forbid bled on your uniform or done it at school or just as an adult in life, had to put the sweater around you. And
Mm-hmm.
so that was a big gift for me is once I tried it, and originally I did not try it in season because I was like, this is too scary. Because,
Yeah.
right, whatever we know is what we know. Even though I bled through a tampon, I was like, I don't know, it's too much. So I waited till after the season was over, gave it a try in the off season, like put it in. And like that first moment when I went to the bathroom and was able to just like pee and wipe and like not have to do anything, like that had me hooked. Like I was like, this is it. Like I felt like I had like the secret that people didn't know. Like, do you know what just happened? Like normally we're like taking a tampon or a pad with us, walking to the bathroom, doing that whole dance, and God forbid you get stuck somewhere you don't have one and you're asking strangers or trying to buy one.
Yep.
And so it just is so, it's just life changing. And it's really liberating. And that's what I tell women, like, please just try it. And you'll get way more in touch with your body too. Like it's pretty cool to just see the different texture of your period too that you didn't realize when you're using tampons or pads. Is that just how like mucusy, and it gave me like an appreciation for my body, like how I I mean like nutrient rich it seems too, like just
Mm-hmm.
seeing it come out. And then for me, like I was surprised like how much blood I actually didn't end up losing, because the cup has like the little
Me
millimeters, but
too.
it feels like you lose way more blood than that because you're so
Yes.
fatigued and tired. Like I feel like I lost like a pint, and it's really
Yeah.
not, at least for my flow, which is like I feel like a middle of the range. I'm not super heavy, but I'm not light. But just was like, wow, that's it, and it's all that. And then the other big thing is when you're at that tail end of your period, where you kind of have that days where you're spotting and you have to put a tampon in where it might like hurt, you pull it in or out, where
Yeah.
it's kind of dry, and that weird time where you're either having to wear a panty liner or you're going to have that kind of brown gunky blood that finishes up. Like that's the best time to wear the cup, because you can wear it again 12 hours and it just catches all that stuff that doesn't end up staining any of your clothes. Like you don't have to have that weird, like, I don't want to put the tampon in right now, and then nothing happened. You just put the cup in and you're like, that was amazing. And then I have it in too whenever I think I'm gonna start, especially when we're traveling.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna start today. I have my period app, so like I'll just put it in. If you don't start, no big deal. You just take it out, wash it again. But like that's got me a lot of cool things. Like we have a game that day, or we're traveling, or anything going to practice, I'll just put it in case I start. Then I'll just take some Advil, deal with the cramps. But I'm not worried about like scrambling to like we're running down the court. Did I actually start? Am I in a meeting? Did I start? Like, am I picking my kids up from school? Whatever it may be,
Yeah.
you're just has way more peace of mind about you. So like I keep one in my toiletry bag that I always travel with, and then like one at home. So I feel like between that and like tracking your period, you're kind of always gonna have it with you somewhere.
Yeah. And it's, you know, you get used to putting it in. It cuts down on so much plastic. I think we don't realize like that big tub of tampons that we buy that are covered in a plastic applicator, because that is easier to insert.
Yes, comfortable.
All of that. And I was actually reading that this, I think it was Ocean Conservancy or some like, they cleaned up Australia's beaches for like a summer, and the amount of like applicators and tampons and stuff that's just like in our garbage and you know, we can't compost them, or we can't like recycle them or whatever, even if it's organic cotton, because it's human waste. It's considered human bio waste.
Yeah.
So they have to go in the trash. So I think just not only like, oh my God, it's just so much better for like that horrible time of the month. You literally put it in the morning and take it out before you go to bed at night without worrying about toxic shock and all of that stuff. And then I just like wash it and then keep it in my purse. And then it's always just there whenever it starts and stuff. And I think people just are like, ew, I have to dump it out. But like, I mean, you just get used to it and you gain an appreciation for your body. So I would say women listening, please just try it.
Yes. I don't think you'll regret it. Yeah, I got to give it a shot.
Yeah.
And the shower is like the best place too. You just have to wash, and you just like, I just usually dump it out in the shower, and you're less like dealing with it all, you know, feel like you're like carried to the sink or that whole thing. Just like
get
when you
used
take
to
a shower.
it. Yeah, in the shower. And then when you're out or whatever, if you have to empty it out in a public restroom or something, you will have gotten used to it by that point. But I think that's a way at least women can start right away.
Yeah, and I've wanted to talk about it more too, because there's so much like, I don't know the percentage of the population who has a period. Obviously, a lot of people have one, and like there's so much shame. Like even as women, you know, especially like we kind of carry the tampon in our pocket or hide it, you know, behind our hand as we're walking, where it's like this very natural thing that like people have because it's what our bodies do, right? And then it obviously ends up women can have kids because of like all these great things that we appreciate about women, but like there's so much shame and silence around the fact that like we bleed once a month, and it's like this totally natural, shameless, like beautiful thing that our body produces that's happening, but like we just, there's silence around it. So I've tried to break more of that by just talking more openly about periods too, and like it's okay, you have one, like sometimes you leak through, and like with any product you're using, and like that sucks, and like it's just something we all go through. So like we should have more conversations about it so people feel less like isolated. And I think that's where a lot of the shame comes from me, like, wait, a cup, because it's just this thing where it's like, stick a tampon up there and don't deal with it. It's like we don't want to be in touch with our bodies or know, like, this is what's happening. And, you know, the putting it in and out kind of thing, I think it's a good appreciation to, like, get more in tune with your body and more in touch and just, like, fight that.
Just normalize it.
It's this beautiful thing that's happening that, like, we all get. So, like, it's not like this weird thing you get because you're some, like, abnormal person.
Yeah. And then the last thing I want to talk about is composting. That has so much to do with nutrition. And I think a lot of people don't know that it's pretty easy. They sell like little compost, like almost like a little mini trash can that are very aesthetically pretty. They can sit on your counter under your sink. Yeah. And thinking about how much, like when you're cleaning your kids' plates at night and they didn't finish a bunch of their stuff, all of that can go in compost. Like apple cores, the edge of the pizza that nobody ate, the eggshells that you cracked,
coffee grounds, anything you peel, like the banana peel, like peeling the carrots, like all those little, you don't realize how much little food waste you have, even if you're not like wasting food. It's just all that like stuff you don't use or we don't eat, the orange peel, things that aren't edible. I really wanted a compost garden. I was going to ask you, do you have one?
I don't, but I have started, once I kind of understood the coffee ground thing and how like nitrogen rich apparently coffee grounds are.
Yeah.
It's like a gold compost. Yeah. It's a gold like Miracle Grow kind of. And so I've started putting our coffee grounds like just in the garden.
Yeah, that's a good one. We're not, I don't live there long enough in our place because we're split, our time between the W team and in the Bay, but that's one of the things I really want to start is a compost garden and using that. It takes, I think, a little bit longer than you realize for it to actually like decompose, but once you're adding the food in there and then mixing it, but like living in the Bay and obviously living in Seattle, like you have compost service. So it was hard
Mhm.
for me moving to at least where we live here in Connecticut, it was like we don't have compost. And we were talking about
Okay.
dinner, but like I looked it up, I researched, I was trying to see if there was a service for anyone to come pick it up. And like because of my area, we're like an hour outside of Hartford. I'm not sure if Hartford has it as a more major city, but like we don't have it here. So that was pretty tough. Like I felt bad when we got here. I was like, I'm just throwing the food like in the trash, knowing what I know now. But again, it's something like you try and you know better, you try and do better, but like in every situation it's not going to be perfect. So like if you
Yes.
just don't have access to compost, you don't like beat yourself up that like you're not doing it. But if you research and try, and especially if it offers it in your city, like that's an easy just throw it in that trash, like big difference that you can make. um,
Yeah. And just checking your, like, go outside and look at your garbage bins because they'll say if it's yard
mhm,
waste and food or if it's just
right.
yard waste. And a lot of people will like throw away things like pizza boxes because they
Yeah.
can't be recycled because they have like food grease and stuff on them. So
Yeah.
recycled objects have to be clean. But that can go in the yard waste or, that can be composted. And so, or like paper plates with a bunch of food on them or food containers that you're like, oh shoot, I can't recycle it. But a lot of that stuff can go in compost and yard waste. So I think um, just bringing awareness to that. And again, every little thing can help.
Yeah, just doing it right. A little bit here, a little bit there. It's not, we're not going to be 1,000% perfect. Like we're talking about the people who like go on a trip and they have this little jar and they're like, this is all the waste I used for my whole trip. I'm
Yes.
like, that's amazing, but I feel like a failure because I'm not on that level yet. I'm not to that point, or there's things I'm throwing away. But another big thing I've used when I've traveled is getting like the bamboo utensils. Like that's a really good
Oh
one because
yeah.
when you travel, you just use like a single use fork or a knife or a spoon just to like stir something and throw it away. A fork just to eat a salad and throw it away. So I have my little bamboo like reusable, and which is compostable after the lifespan of it.
Hmm.
Gonna get reused is I just travel with that and I use it and it's awesome. It's easy to clean
Yeah.
too. So they're like, give me a fork. I'm like, no, thank you. I don't need one.
Yeah. Or like people who like work a lot or have to pick up takeout a lot or, um,
Yeah,
and they're constantly running and grabbing stuff and, they're going to throw plastic fork and spoon in the bag or
yeah,
whatever. Even just like using your actual like fork and spoon from your kitchen, just wrap it in
yeah,
a little piece of fabric or something, keep it in your purse or keep it in your bag
yeah.
or at your office or
That
whatever so
works.
that,
Yeah.
you're not, because think about if you do that every day, if you eat out every day in your office for lunch
Mhm.
or something, how many like plastic single use
Right,
forks and stuff. And
right.
some of the places now are doing like compostable
Yes.
utensils and things like that. But, people all around the country, not everybody has that option. So I think you and I have given a lot of ideas for people to start. So, like for skin, we've talked about maybe deodorant,
Yeah.
starting there. Um, for single use plastic, what would you say was like would be an easy thing for people to just start with?
I would say the Ziploc bags. That's probably an easy one. Yeah. Start with those.
Yeah,
Trying
with
to
some of
either
those
like the
replacements.
beeswax or like the homemade things you can use, like a paper towel. The beeswax are great because they have the ones that are kind of like containery too that you can roll up, or they have those straight wraps where you can wrap a sandwich or wrap an apple or different things like that in there.
Hmm.
Uh, or the Tupperware, I would say that's a good switch
The
too. Like
glass.
switch to glass. Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
And then for food, you mentioned Meatless Monday. So that
Yeah.
that was a big movement a while ago, and I feel like it died off.
I know, maybe because now it's just like be vegan. Like if meatless Monday's not enough, I don't know. Maybe that's why.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
a good challenge around this one would be, well, one, you can try eating more seafood. I think
Mhm.
that's like, I'm constantly harping on people about the benefits of omega-3s. So I feel
Yeah.
like I'm constantly like, you need to eat more fish. So for me, that'll like help with nutritional, quality. But then also just if we could get people to eat a little bit more fish instead of beef or chicken.
But what's the recommendation, right? Because you don't want farmed raised fish. You want
Yes, wild,
wild caught.
wild caught. And you can go on like Google sustainable seafood and things like that. If you're a sushi lover, there's obviously some that are A, have more mercury and things like that, but then B, are less sustainably caught.
Right.
So, and I think, is it the Monterey Bay Aquarium that does all like the research and stuff? They have a good like fish seafood buying guide.
Oh, that's a good one to have. Yeah. Because that's the
Mm-hmm.
problem. I feel like we talked about this. Fish used to seem like the easy thing to just go to, and we heard about factory farming. So you're like, oh, I can just eat fish or shrimp and I know it's good. And now literally they're like raised on a farm with not a lot of space. Like we're doing the same thing with fish now. So that's like scary, is trying to make sure you know like where it's from. And we
Yeah,
talked
I think.
too, when you eat out, you're like, are you gonna be that that person who's like asking the restaurant, like, where did you catch your salmon from? Like, is the chicken from? Like, and we travel a ton, so that's like super hard. I try not to think about it honestly when we
I
travel.
know.
We're like, where did this, especially in the airport, I'm like, where did this chicken come from?
What was his name? Did he have good friends on the farm?
Yes, yes.
Oh my gosh. Um, and then I think another challenge for people who are like, hey, maybe I hate fish, or like, I'm not going to do meatless Monday. Try one of your meals, like one dinner with the meat as a side, and then fill
Mhm.
in your entree with something else. Like either do a giant salad as your entree with like a little meat on top, or if you're
Right,
wanting something that's like definitely a meat dish, do a little bit smaller and then fill more of your plate with the broccoli or the
right.
couscous or whatever it is. Like just try to change the balance.
Uh-huh. So yeah, instead of like the 12-ounce steak with everything around it, yeah.
Yeah. And maybe like a reusable cup. Go get a favorite like coffee cup, or go get a water
Oh,
bottle.
water bottle, that's a big one too. Right, especially with traveling a lot, or water bottle, like not buying the bottle of water and smart water is just so many airports now have their refillable little things by the bathroom that
Yeah,
shows how many water bottles you saved. Because plastic bottles, that's a big one too. So
totally.
I always have like a refillable water bottle with me. And even in hotels, I just go down to the bar and like ask them to put some water in it instead of like using the plastic bottle.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
If you want to get really advanced, and I take my coffee cup with me too, but which feels so homey when I travel, because like it stays hotter longer too than when you get like the tea at Starbucks, which we all do when we travel. It's like
Mm-hmm.
that every time you use that. I know Starbucks is trying to be better about not having straws anymore. Like they're making things better, but I take my like little like 12-ounce reusable coffee cup with me, and then it feels better when I like travel and I have my little to-go cup. So that's a nice catch too.
Yeah, I got one of those collapsible silicone
Yeah, does
coffee
that
cups.
work? I saw those.
Awesome. I didn't get like the main brand. I got like a different brand. I like did research or whatever and found the best rated one, but it totally doesn't leak. It's like folded into the size of a coaster, and I just keep it in my purse, and it has a little carabiner. It can like hook on stuff, and it works for like hot or cold. So I use that as like my water bottle and my coffee cup, and it's awesome.
Ooh, yeah. See, I like that because it takes up less room. Because sometimes having both my bottles, like, and a book and your laptop and all that
I
stuff,
know.
is a little like heavy.
Yeah. Well, we have given a lot of thought and then a lot of ideas for people. So thanks for like just sharing your journey, because then I realized that we're kind of along the same path, and we're both kind of slowly trying to do little things,
Yeah,
but not beating ourselves up about it either. Like just
right.
doing little things as we go. And so I think what a fun way for us to talk about like nutrition and health, but with this nice little environmental spin. So
Love it.
thanks for
Yeah.
coming on and sharing.
Thanks for
I really
having me.
appreciate your
Always a pleasure.
time. Any other like closing thoughts or anything else that you have?
No, I mean, yeah, little changes. I think I'm very much of the mind of, even with working out and everything, it's like doing a little bit every day is going to lead up to a big picture. So not like all of a sudden I'm never going to use anything plastic again, or I'm going to go work out for 4 hours today. It's like just little changes, doing a little bit every day, like leads you to the big picture and gets you just like a little bit, and you'll get there.
Yeah. Well, I know that I'm really excited to see you back on the court. And I know a
Yay!
lot of other people are. When can we expect to see you back, you think?
Probably not this season, unfortunately. It's just too close. Like I'm starting to work back a little bit, but just obviously the playoffs are like right around the corner, so it's too close of timing. So hopefully by like November I'll be good back playing, and then obviously taking the whole off season again like normal. I don't play overseas to like work out and train, and then 100% for sure by next season. So
Sweet. Well, I'll be helping you along the way in your recovery. We'll keep talking about all of that, but for people rooting you on, I think they'll be really excited to see you back. But thank you so much for spending time with me, and I'm going to include a bunch of links. So if you have any of those links that I can put in the podcast notes, send those over to me.
Oh yeah.
For stuff.
All right.
All right. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you later.
All right. Later.
Okay. Bye, Layshia.